Today, we're diving into a really big question in ethics. What actually makes an action right or wrong? For a whole school of thought, the answer isn't in the action itself, but in what happens after the fact.
So let's kick things off with this question right here. Think about it. Is telling a lie always automatically wrong? Or does it matter if that lie, say, saves someone's life? This is the central conflict we're getting into today. The classic showdown between intentions and outcomes.
All right, here's the game plan. We're going to start with the big idea of judging actions purely by their results. Then, we'll look at two major theories that do just that. One that's all about me, and another that's all about we. And trust me, we're going to see their strengths and where they run into some really big problems.
Okay, let's jump right into our first section and get our most important term on the table. This is really the big umbrella that's going to cover everything else we talk about.
So, the core idea of consequentialism is actually pretty simple when you get down to it. To figure out if something is moral, you don't look at the action in a vacuum. Nope, you look ahead. You look at the ripples it causes. Good actions, they lead to good results. Bad actions, well, they lead to bad results. So the most moral thing to do is whatever creates the most good in the world. Simple as that.
So that brings us to our first version of this whole consequentialist idea. And it starts by asking a really blunt question. When we say good results, whose good are we actually talking about? This first theory has a very, very clear answer. And that answer is you. Ethical egoism says that the morally right action is whatever benefits you the most. Now, this isn't just about being selfish for the sake of it. It's a full-blown moral theory that argues that promoting your own well-being is the right and proper thing to do.
So to see how this plays out, let's take a look at Rosa. She's a sharp executive, she's up for a huge promotion, and she stumbles upon a memo. Now, this memo is a game changer. It could help her or hurt her, all depending on what she does next. This isn't just a career move, it's a moral crossroads.
Rosa's looking at three distinct paths. Path 1 is kind of the neutral option. Just get rid of it. Option 2 is the cutthroat move. Use the memo to take out her colleague and basically guarantee yourself the job. Then there's option 3, be a loyal teammate. Show it to him, which might cost her the promotion, but would build a ton of trust. So, what does she do?
Okay, now here's the twist. For a true ethical egoist, this isn't about the quick win. It's all about her long-term best interests. I mean, think about it. Sure, discrediting Vincent might get her the job tomorrow, but what happens next week? If everyone sees her as a backstabber, she might get iced out, and her career could tank in the long run. An egoist has to weigh all of that and pick the path that truly, genuinely benefits Rosa the most down the line.
But, as you can probably guess, this whole me-first philosophy runs into some complications. Can you really build a functioning society on a moral system that tells every single person to put themselves first? Let's dig into why that gets pretty tricky.
And before we do, this is a really, really important distinction. On the left, we have psychological egoism. This is just a theory about how people are. It basically says, hey, we're all wired to be selfish. It's a description. But on the right, you have ethical egoism, and that's making a much, much bigger claim. It's not saying how we are, it's saying how we should be. It's a moral command. That's a huge difference.
And that command leads to some massive problems. I mean, for starters, it could justify actions that we all feel are just plain horrible. Like the example here, hurting a family member for money. If it's in your best interest, the theory says go for it. It also completely throws the idea of moral equality out the window, because it literally says your interests are more important than everyone else's. And what happens when my self-interest clashes with your self-interest? The theory gives us no way to solve that conflict.
Okay, so if focusing only on ourselves is a bit of a mess, what's the alternative? Well, let's move on to our next big theory, which takes that circle of moral concern and blows it wide open, from just me to, well, everybody.
And to get us there, think about this scenario. Imagine Dr. X is one step away from a cure for all heart disease. Millions of people would live who would otherwise die. The catch? To get that final piece of data, she has to kill one perfectly healthy, innocent person. From a purely results-based view, the math seems simple, right? One life to save millions. But could doing that ever be the right thing?
That gut-wrenching dilemma leads us right to utilitarianism. Now, it agrees with egoism on one thing. Consequences are what matter. But, and this is a huge but, it totally redefines the good. The goal is no longer about maximizing your own happiness. It's about maximizing the total sum of happiness in the entire world for everyone.
This is the classic line from one of the founding fathers of this idea, Jeremy Bentham. He basically argued that this one single principle, what he called the greatest happiness principle, should be our guide for everything, from what we have for dinner to how we write our laws. It's all about a simple moral calculation of pleasure versus pain.
But then another brilliant thinker, John Stuart Mill, came along and added a really important layer to this. He said, hold on, it's not just about the amount of happiness, it's about the quality. Things like intellectual discovery or deep friendships are higher quality pleasures than, say, just eating a snack. As he famously put it, it's better to be a deep-thinking but sometimes sad human than a simple, perfectly content pig.
But here's the thing. This idea of a happiness calculation, as nice as it sounds, has a really dark side. Utilitarianism can force us into some deeply uncomfortable corners, where achieving the so-called greatest good might mean we have to do something that feels just terribly wrong.
Let's bring in another classic dilemma. A surgeon has 5 patients, each about to die, each needing a different organ. Just then, a perfectly healthy young guy walks in for a routine checkup. Now, a cold, hard, utilitarian calculation says the surgeon should sacrifice that one healthy person, harvest his organs, and save the 5. 5 lives for 1. The net happiness in the world goes up.
And this is the moment where the theory slams headfirst into our basic moral intuitions, our gut feelings about justice, about individual rights, about the idea that a single life has value. Can a moral theory possibly be right if it tells you that what seems like cold-blooded murder is the right thing to do? This is the absolute biggest challenge for utilitarianism.
Now, to try and solve this problem, philosophers came up with a clever split. On one side, you have act-utilitarianism, which looks at every single situation on a case-by-case basis. And that's what leads to these really troubling conclusions. But on the other side, you have rule-utilitarianism. It asks a different question. What general rule, if everyone followed it, would create the most happiness in the long run? A rule like doctors must never kill healthy patients to harvest their organs would almost certainly create more trust and overall good for society.
Whew. So after running through these two really powerful but really different theories, what's the big takeaway? Where does this leave us as we try to figure out how to be good people?
Well, we've seen that just focusing on the results gives us a pretty clear, logical way to think about morality. But it also seems that whether we define the good as what's best for me or what's best for everyone, we keep crashing into these other values we hold dear, like fairness, individual rights, and basic justice. It's not as simple as it looks. And that leaves us right here, with this fundamental conflict. When the cold, clean logic of a moral theory grinds against the messy, powerful feelings in our hearts, which one gets the final say? Is morality a math problem we're supposed to solve, or is it something deeper, something we feel in our gut? Consequentialism gives us a powerful formula, for sure, but it doesn't tell us what to do when the answer it spits out just feels profoundly, deeply wrong. And that really is a question you have to answer for yourself.